Okay, hello everyone, this is JumbleJom1 here, and what is up? Well, the ceiling of course. Ha ha, funny joke introduction. So, we're going to be doing something a little different this time. It is going to be different. Why? Well, look at the title, I just couldn't be bothered to carry on with the other thing I was doing. But, basically, this is a physics lecture, basically. On the fourth dimension, huzzah! Yeah, so this will either fail miserably or not. I've got a weird script to try and help me through this, but yeah. So let's start off. Basically, first, before we start off on the fourth dimension, we're going to have to focus on the idiots who are watching this. And we're going to start off with what are dimensions? Well, as you can see here, it looks quite complicated if you don't know what a dimension is. I guess, I don't know. No need to insult anyone who doesn't know what a dimension is. Yeah. But so, the definition of a dimension from the dictionary, because I really couldn't be bothered to describe it myself, I just looked in the dictionary. It is basically a property of space or an extension in any given direction. And this basically means that it's kind of something that marks how... Oh, stupid pig. Pig. Something that marks how much, you know, how space is used up. So, say like this, I've made this little thing to help people out who don't know what dimensions are. Basically, I'm just going to label this rather quickly. I labelled it for, you know, it could be labelled anyway, but this is just to make it a bit easier to understand. Basically, that is a one-dimensional object. Although it's hard to describe in Minecraft because they're all blocks. But yeah, basically just imagine the one line going down there. That's a one-dimensional object. It's got no kind of solidity or mass in any other kind of direction. It's just a straight line across in one direction, and that's what would count. And basically each other dimension is an extension off of kind of the naught dimensions, which would be just sorry, I'm pretty rubbish at this, but out of nothing. This is basically nothing until you add dimensions to it, and then yeah. And so a second dimension would be obviously an extension in another way. Of course, it doesn't have to be across this way, it can be up as well, or any other way. It can basically be any other way so long as it doesn't do something like this. That would be moving into the third dimension, because it would obviously be popping up across another extension, because as you can see it's going an extension along the length and the width, but here we're getting some depth here, so this would be two-dimensional until you add that. And of course you know what three-dimensional is because the bloody TV people have been banging on about it for ages, being annoying. And although these extensions are in straight lines, the object of course can be anything as long as it fits within those boundaries. So kind of a two-dimensional object can consist of something like a diagonal line across it, like that, and it's still two-dimensional. This doesn't count as this kind of a third extension across, because it's kind of still contained within these extensions, as you can see, kind of. And that's basically the way it goes. And so basically, if I can find where I was, I'm doing this in the backdrop of my little cinema I made, because I found that quite nice and homely. But basically, what scientists believe is that, or physicists more likely, is that there isn't just these three single dimensions, because we've already kind of, the first dimension is quite obvious, it's just a line. Two-dimensional objects are just drawings, and three-dimensional is actually physical objects. But scientists have the idea of there being more dimensions, so say a fourth dimension or a fifth dimension, and The only problem is, of course, we can't see these dimensions. Yeah, big problem. And they've said there's actually as many as probably 11 different dimensions, hence the big 11, um, which is a bit ludicrous. So I'm basically going to take you through a couple of theories that people have in order to try and prove that the fourth dimension exists. Or not just to prove it, but to also see if we can visualize what the fourth dimension would look like. So the first theory we're going to look at is the net theory. This is the idea that each dimensional shape can be made out of the previous dimension, kind of the form of which you would bend to make it. So as you can see here, a one-dimensional line, I've made black points to mark the bends to make it easier for you, can easily be kind of folded along the second dimension to create this two-dimensional shape, and so on with the kind of the second dimension. We can create a net for a cube. I didn't put kind of markers there because it would be a hell of a lot more confusing than it is to create a cube. And so we've got the idea, or scientists or physicists have, that we should be able to make a net for the fourth dimension using this principle. And as you can see, it follows a little pattern, which is that 1, 2, 3, 4 different bends would create this cube, and then as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different bends would create the actual cube after the square. And so we have the idea that we'd need 8 objects to bend in order to create the fourth dimensional object, which fourth dimensional variation of the square. Of course, this revolves around the square. Yeah, sorry. Oh wait, you can't hear ambience. Sorry. I hate getting creeped out by ambience. So this is the idea that we'd have for an actual fourth dimensional net made out of third dimension. As you can see, it's it's quite complicated, and obviously because we've only really witnessed three-dimensional objects, we can't really think up any kind of way of bending this in order to create a fourth dimensional object. I have to rapidly move on now because we're already 7 minutes in. Another theory, I partially scripted this, sorry for the rustling of paper. Rustling of paper. So we have another theory, rapidly moving on. I call it the, the connecting theory. By the way, these theory names are probably not right, because I know the series but I haven't researched the names, although I know the basic gist of what they are. This is what I'd like to call the connecting theory, and it's basically the idea. I like this one the most because it works for zero-dimensional it goes far as back as to zero-dimensional objects, so it can prove 3 kind of steady connections, which is what you would need really in order to prove a theory quite well, because the other ones only work from start off on the first dimension, they don't focus on zero dimension. So there's the idea that you have 2 zero-dimensional points, pretend they are zero-dimensional, and if you connect them up, then you have a one-dimensional object, as you can see, and you would connect them up with one line, and then if you got 2 of these kind of one-dimensional lines and put them next to each other, then you could connect them up with 2 different lines to create, of course, this two-dimensional object. It's working around the base of squares at the moment. I don't know, it could be something else. Actually, it couldn't really be something else. A lot of these theories mainly go around cubes and squares, and then it's the same with the third dimension, getting 2 of these squares and connecting them up with 4 of these. And this has led to the idea of the hypercube, which is the idea of 2 cubes connected by 8 different lines put together. And there's 2 variations of this. This is the first variation. It's basically a cube within a cube, like Cubeception or some crap like that. Fan bases nowadays coming up with that. But still, I'm not sure about this one. I don't know, it may not be right with me, because I don't think, because the cubes would, in the previous examples, the different shapes have been exactly the same size, and I don't really see this being right. But of course, obviously if it's been warped in the fourth dimension somehow, it'd obviously be different. This one I more agree with, is two cubes kind of next to each other being connected through that. And obviously I can't make these objects solidly, because obviously I don't know what they look like fourth dimensionally. Because this, obviously, if this was a solid object, it would probably look completely different to what it is now. This is just kind of an outline that computers have made. So I quite like this one.